It's time to do episode number 150.
Hey,
Hey.
that's cool.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We had an interesting week.
I think it was I
Yeah,
think it
we
was great
we went to Austin and back.
and got some barbecue.
Yes, we did. Barbara Crew, the Texas BHEC Council. You know, one of the things that I fret over, the list is long, but one of the things is the AMP organization is Texas based. I mean, we got to be somewhere. We're in Texas, and we don't have chapters in all 50
No.
states and that sort of thing.
Mm-mm.
We do have members in about half of them.
Yes.
And we obviously follow what's going on in Texas very closely and try to follow other states as we can, as our resources will allow. And
Yes.
you're looking at our resources.
Yes.
And so when somebody says, I don't know if I want to belong to this group because they're Texas only. No, we're not Texas only. What we're trying to do is set a model or create a model. We're working Texas because that's where we are, but we're trying to set a model so that anybody in another state can go, well, if that's what you got to do, I can do that here.
Right.
And you have to pick up the ball and run with it. Nobody's going to come cut your meat for you.
There's several common denominators regardless of what state you belong to.
Right.
And ours is quite unique, but we're of the mind, body, spirit, holistic approach, as well as creating an environment for counselors who have been trashed by a certain viewpoint discrimination model in
Mhm.
our graduate schools and other associations who push a type of viewpoint discrimination. And it just gives these counselors a place to land, commune, fellowship, heal,
I can't tell you how
and
many
learn.
times we've heard people
Yes.
say, I think I found my tribe.
Yeah.
That's the phrase they use
Yeah.
quite frequently, my tribe. So you can be
Which
the
is kind of
chief.
telling because they've been looking and they haven't felt like
Right.
their voices have been heard. And, that's probably true on many levels. So I think we just took the position of like, well, we can maybe be the house and just the door is open.
And that and nobody else at the other organizations was listening.
Right.
There is that.
Yeah.
So what did you get out of in Texas,
Mm.
we have 4 licensing boards, LPC, MFT, social worker, and psych. And then 2 members from each of those boards
Right.
comprise something called the council, which runs the agency, or they're in charge of the agency. Then there's an administrative arm to the agency that actually does the day-to-day paperwork, complaint process, and so forth. So the council, if you can get in front of the council, and you can show up and make public comment when they
Mhm.
meet, you have effectively talked to all 4 boards.
Yes.
And that's how it works in our state. And much like Pentecost, hopefully these people go back home to their home country, their
There-
home boards,
Board-
and say, you know what,
know what?
somebody brought up a good point.
Right.
And that's how we can get our message out to all 4 boards.
At
In
the
addition
coffee
to
stand, at the water
Yeah.
cooler, kind of
the
just
water cooler talk.
right.
Yeah. And things are progressing very well in Texas. And if you've been wondering, what can you do in your state? Well,
Yes.
do what Kathleen does. What would Kathleen do? And do that. Show up at your board meeting and tell them what you think. You don't have to be, anyway, you don't have
Well,
to be eloquent. Just show up.
I think a large majority of counselors, don't want to get into the advocacy part because it's fairly related to them feeling not heard in their communities. And I'm talking about with other professionals, especially on Facebook or Instagram or whatever you choose to do. But those Facebook groups that counselors have, you quickly get an idea of whether you're going to fit in or not and what you can talk about and what you can't talk about. And that's the rub for a lot of professionals who have found us and they go, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been looking for.
All right.
And who knew, but okay. And we're happy to fit into that niche. But I think it's a niche that counselors are still looking to have a voice, have a say, now be validated by their Christian beliefs or their faith-based models or whatever. And that has not existed ever, I don't think.
One of the things that I noticed in we've been traveling about 12 years now. And one of the first things I noticed in the first couple of years was that counselors have it in their minds that doing anything outside of their office runs counter to their professional obligation.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting about that, but I think it's because it's more fear-based than anything. Because they have legitimate reasons to not, based on being, I don't know, condemned,
Mm.
threatened, blacklisted,
Whatever
etc.
whatever the reason,
Yeah. And I think that's a real thing.
They're reticent to speak
Of
up.
course.
If you don't speak up, they're coming for you next.
Yes.
So you need to speak up before that happens.
Well, you've been
All right.
captured if you don't choose to have a voice. You've already been captured in that way.
Hmm.
They have silenced you.
Let's talk about what Chiles versus Salazar is and what it accomplished.
Yes.
And then I want to come back and ask you what happened at that council meeting we attended that you approved of.
Oh.
So the Chiles v. Salazar case was a Supreme Court case that happened here in the last couple of months. The opinions were rendered and so forth. So you want to talk about that? Chiles v. Salazar. What was the case?
The case was a counselor
Colorado.
in Colorado. One of her clients was posing a question, but in the state of Colorado, counselors have been banned to talk about all parts of gender affirming care, and they couldn't talk about anything else.
Yeah, I think what happened was
along the way
that one of her clients came in and said, I want to talk about this.
And she said, I can't do it
because
I'm going to lose my license.
Wouldn't let her do
which
it.
is kind of ironic, actually, because if you think about it, counseling is talk therapy, and we are speech. We're having a conversation. It's about having speech within the 10 by 10 room. And Colorado pretty much said, this is the thing you need to talk about.
You can't talk
and
about
you
this.
can't talk about that. And so where does that play in the whole body recovery approach? It really doesn't. It's almost to the point of facilitating something that's not quite kosher, and people and clients want to talk about the other side. And the counselor said, I can't do that. So she knew her rules apparently extremely well about that.
And she didn't like that. So she filed suit, Chiles versus Salazar, which is all about viewpoint discrimination.
Yes.
That's what it's about. That's all it's about.
Nothing else.
Not that it limits ramifications, but it was all about viewpoint discrimination. Chiles v. Salazar says that the states, plural, all of them, cannot limit what somebody can talk about, even in the counseling room.
Right.
And one of the tactics that the opposition uses to try and overcome that is to reclassify professional speech or speech as conduct.
Yes.
Because you can regulate conduct, but they know that they're going to get their tails kicked in court on a free speech issue.
Right.
Because the courts are very, very loath to do anything First Amendment wise as far as limiting.
Right.
They have done some, but it's very, very minuscule, and it borders on, I mean, you got to be inciting a riot in the streets with a bullhorn and a Molotov cocktail in your hand.
Well, that's when it becomes something other than free speech.
That's correct. That is absolutely right.
Because you're fixing to maybe break laws, and that's the line, right? Like I can say anything I want up to a point.
Right.
But SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, ruled that that's what counselors do. They're talking about all sides. They shall and will as a result of the First Amendment.
They reconfirmed speech cannot be totally removed from the counseling room and reclassified as conduct so that it's more easily regulated.
Right.
And the boards can say what you can and can't do. No. Your speech is protected.
Right.
What you do in the little room is actually reclassified. You know, you and I can go out on the street right now and we can think anything we want to think, and we can pretty much say anything we want to say.
That's right.
But when you come in the little room and close the door with a client, your free speech just became professional speech, and that can be regulated. That can be further regulated. It's regulated by three entities. Your professional ethics. We get a say in this professional care that you deliver. That's what's being regulated, is the care, not your speech.
Correct.
Right? So you got the professional ethics. And where does that come from? You've got state licensing laws and the larger First Amendment doctrine on professional speech. So Chiles v. Salazar said, no, this is not professional conduct. This is professional speech, and you cannot limit what somebody can talk or think about in the counseling room to the degree it doesn't conflict with those three that I just mentioned.
And what was attempted to do for a while until it got overturned was to narrow that professional speech. This is the only thing you can do in your 10 by 10 room. So they just cut off another realm of conversation that could possibly take
Sure.
place. And even if the client brings it up, she couldn't do it anyways.
Right.
It's kind of crazy.
It's a blatant attempt, or not attempt, they did it,
No, they did it.
to limit what you can think or talk about.
Well, it supports an ideology,
Yeah.
and that's the viewpoint discrimination.
Yeah, that's an interesting segue right there.
Mm.
The current challenges we face, a lot of this is cut and dry stuff. Take it to the court, they pass a judgment, bam, everybody happy and abide by the decision, on we go. But that's not what we're dealing with these days. The current challenges are at least three: the infiltration of the larger academic system.
Mm-hmm.
We're cranking out little social justice warriors and then licensing them instead of
Not
science-based clinicians.
But they call themselves clinicians.
And that's not an overnight fix.
No, it's not.
And the second item is a reliance on poor quality opinion-based research reports.
Yeah.
For example, pretty much everything that WPATH, let's pick on them since they're in the news, has used as their justification for their reason for being has been debunked. And that's a fact. They'll argue that, but it's been debunked. It's poor quality research based largely on opinion and bad surveys.
Well, if we want to go there, but UPath never based their decisions on medical evidence. What they were all about was they represented a consensus-based expert opinion of what should occur. Completely different. But most people, including clinicians who support this UPath organization, are twisting this and saying, well, because they call it a standard of care, it must be science-based. So
must be something behind that. They wouldn't do it otherwise, right?
Right. But, we can talk about that later. So go ahead.
The third current challenge that makes up the zeitgeist we live in is the professional organizations who have replaced science with ideology, and the standards of care suffer.
Yes. And please realize that anybody can have a peer-reviewed article or something with research or what have you. I mean, anybody can do that. Anybody can get several peers to basically christen the research. And then what happens, and this is in the medical field, clearly, but it's also happening in the counseling world. If it's peer-reviewed, it must be science-based.
Right.
And this is fact because I proved it. You can prove anything you want in a research project. If you haven't been awake since 2020, okay, do you remember the whole, get the jab because it's safe and effective? And there's no research that supported it, but they were promoting that it was safe and effective. Well, that's what's getting WPATH in trouble.
Sure.
Because they're doing the same thing.
Same playbook.
Same playbook. It's just on a different population.
What they count on is the current challenges. They're counting on redefining everything.
Yeah, they're
redefining everything to
Yes.
support a narrative that they're
Yes.
pushing.
Correct.
Then the second thing is an ignorant public or professional.
Well, listen, there's a hierarchy here.
Ignorant meaning a lack of information.
Well, it's not even ignorance. It's the hierarchy of power. For instance, a client comes into your 10 by 10. Okay, let's go to the medical side. A patient goes to their primary care physician, and the white coat is telling them from above, hey, you need to be on these prescriptions because I said so. And the patient is not.
There's an imbalance of power.
There's a very imbalance of power. It's the same thing in the counseling room. If a counselor says, oh, you need XYZ, the client doesn't have that skill set to critically think anymore. They did before, but something has happened. It's that imbalance of power. So counselors be very cognizant of that in your 10 by 10. The client is coming you for your expertise, but also the counselor, at least in the counseling field that I belong to, is I'm going to challenge them to critically think through things and not just believe just because I told them something.
Well, that's you, but the social justice warrior is not thinking like that.
Correct. And I think that's the imbalance. We've got a heavy balance on a certain
They're
viewpoint.
taking advantage of the imbalance.
And they're taking advantage of it. They don't realize it, perhaps, or maybe they do. I don't know. So you have to ask this question. Why is mental illness increasing and not decreasing as a result of having, in the state of Texas, 97,000 therapists?
Yeah.
Why is mental illness increasing when there's 97,000 of us on top of people who are licensed in other states that are also licensed in I mean, think
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah. But workforce shortage.
Okay, we're going to go there.
We're going
There's
there.
no workforce shortage. What there is a shortage of is
Proper
effective
placement.
treatment to have the client be self-reliant and fully recover from fill in the blank, not be dependent. And that's what's happening in the allopathic world. That's what's happening on the medical side. I know why, but why are people sicker physically now? We've got all this technology in the medical world. We've got all these pills. Oh, this is going to help you. And no, it's not. It's like the drug for the rest of your life. That's not getting well. That's just suppressing. So there's no wellness here.
Right.
And it's the similar, perhaps, in the counseling world, two-prong, because we're kind of buying into the allopathic, the big pharma stuff.
The model.
But the second one is there a competency issue? Is there, uh, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, my answer to the question is number one, proper placement of these people. It's like if you were going to school to be an architect, but the market is flooded with architects.
Yes.
Somebody in the school needs to say, maybe this is not a
Isn't it
good
good
idea.
idea?
Maybe you need to go to
You
some
know,
different form
you're
of
going to have a
engineering.
hard, or at least be honest. Be honest with your grad students. You know, our field is pretty saturated and you're going to have to hustle to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to hustle to make a living because there's 95,000 therapists in the state of Texas.
And
That's a lot.
I can tell you from
And
the
we've done the
emails,
math.
the emails that I get that a lot of them are having trouble filling their calendars.
Yeah, it's stunning. They're
Wait a minute. If we've got a workforce
Or
shortage,
shortage.
why can't you fill your
Your
calendar?
calendar should be beyond
How does
full.
that work?
Well, it's the definition of what they view as full, too. So that's another thing.
Yes, it is. And that's a combination of factors, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around
Yeah.
it. In fact, the lawyers and the courts are still trying to wrap
Yeah.
their heads around all of this stuff. So, by the way, this is not legal advice.
It's
We're
not.
discussing current events here. So don't run off and say, Kathleen and Philip said, I need to go do this, this.
Yeah, we don't. No.
Kathleen and Philip said, you need to think. You
Just
need to
think
sit down
through
and think like
this.
we're doing and figure all this out. So,
Well, and research it too. Like read your own stuff, and especially the SCOTUS, the Chiles v. Salazar. I got the whole packet that I'm going to read again. You know, in a couple weeks when I go on vacation. That's my pleasure. I get to read court stuff.
you take
But
vacation so you can catch up on your
yeah,
reading for work.
yes. So, but
Aren't you
anyway,
a lot of fun?
yeah, I'm just a joy. Let's talk about Chiles versus
Well,
Salazar and
yes,
the fallout
before
with
we
that.
before we do that, a few months ago, the Attorney General in Texas
Ken Paxton.
ruled that we passed Senate Bill 14 in 23, I think it was 23 or 25,
24.
one of those 2 years.
Yeah.
And Senate Bill 14 essentially outlawed the physical transitioning of minors in Texas.
Which included hormone, puberty blockers, and all the mutilation surgeries that follow.
And letter writing. Now, that's what Senate Bill 14 did. There was some question about the language. Does this language include the mental health counselor, the licensed mental health counselor? Attorney General said, yes, it does.
Yes, the question was, well, mental health counselors aren't healthcare providers, so we're good. We can still write the letters. That was the thing.
Despite the fact that your rule book says you are.
Yes.
And Texas
by
code
definition,
says
at
that you
least in
are.
LPC rule book, it says we are healthcare providers. It's right there. But anyway, so this is where it got really dicey.
But Senate Bill 14 does apply
to mental health. We are healthcare providers.
So that little ruckus has been going on for about the last pushing a year now, I guess, since everything was filed originally, come to a head in March.
Yeah.
And then part of the ruckus that we've seen since then is certain legacy associations, a lot of them are still promoting this gender affirming care subject. Now, 2 questions. Is that a good idea? Is that really where is that the hill you want to die on? Promoting that. And number 2, do they have a legal First Amendment right to do that? And number 2, the answer is yes, they do.
Yes.
You can say whatever you want, even if it's
believe
wrong or it's backing up an illegal thing, you can do that.
yeah,
So
and
they
if
have a right to do that.
you have a right to do that. I'm not gonna take that away from any other professional organizations at all.
Which brings me back to question one. Is that really a good idea to do? To promote something that is outlawed in your state simply because you disagree with it?
Well, hang on. I wanna
Sure.
clarify. We're talking about gender affirming care for minors, birth to 18. We're not talking about gender affirming care for 18 and up.
That's a different legal
It's a
question.
different legal question. So when you hear gender affirming care being banned in the state of Texas, it is just for minors. And now it's codified in law. So it's now a law. So now all the organizations have to kind of dial it back. They can talk about gender affirming care, all that. The counselor can do the free speech in the 10 by 10 room, all that, all points. But free speech is only free speech until it violates a law, whether it's a state statute or a federal one, such as the
Right.
SCOTUS, the Chiles versus Salazar.
And professional speech is okay as long until it violates, as you just said, professional ethics, state law, or the First Amendment, larger
Correct.
First Amendment doctrine on professional speech.
Right. So if you want to have a certain kind of website, I suppose that's free speech,
It is.
right? And so that's not the concern. Now, here's the twist. I think that Charles Salazar case has really, I'm globbing onto at this point. But remember, we talked about the counselors who feel
Left out.
left out. And one of the reasons why they feel left out and not included on the conversation is because there has been since 2000 a very big push of certain things that you need to be believing in while excluding others. And then grad students, I'm including grad students in this, have been really threatened by their schools. And some we know have been sanctioned by the dean of the school for taking a more of a Christian based or faith based counterpoint to the homework that has been issued.
What they're doing?
This is and so this is a viewpoint discrimination curriculum.
Exactly. What they're doing, the strategy, and this is not new, this is going back,
Right.
is they're taking a viewpoint discrimination tactic at the private level until they can get it codified at the state level,
Right.
which they were successful in doing in Colorado.
Yes.
But the Charles Salazar case said, no, you can't do that.
You can't restrict free speech
Okay.
talk therapy in that 10 by 10 room.
So with that as a framework, you were excited about,
Hmm.
the whole Senate Bill 14 and the Attorney Generals said, yes, it applies to counselors.
Yeah.
At the council meeting that we went to earlier this week, what happened?
Well, they did review the Child Salazar case, clarifying what it meant. That was my take. And so the executive director clarified in a public meeting that's on record. This included all kinds of talk and even from faith based counselors. That's allowed. So if you're a Christian counselor or you subscribe to a different type of faith, you are just as equal in that as the ideology that have been suppressing those faith based types of folks.
You're entitled to your beliefs.
You're entitled to your beliefs. And what I'm trying to point out with, you are equal with the ideology now. You don't have to subscribe to it because you have free speech in your room to do whatever you want. Talk wise, clearly you don't have sex with your client.
Right.
Clearly you don't do insurance fraud or anything like that. But if you're a faith-based counselor, let that help you so you can advocate for what you think now is the right thing in our profession to do. We have been very bullied and threatened and blacklisted by the ideology folks who believe or think or suspect that people like me are a hater, racist, the laundry list of words. They have no idea who I am. And they for sure have no idea who I see and who I treat. They would be shocked.
Are the toddlers picking on you again? They have been.
Sure. But what my point is this. Chiles v. Salazar includes all types of speech. Your conscious protection rights are secure. Let that help you so you are now equal with the ideology that we've been force-fed this whole time. You get to rebuke it because you have free speech, is my point.
Yes, we are now equal implies that we never have been. I think
Mm,
a better way to phrase that might
mm,
be that the ideologists who have placed themselves in a superior position have been told that no, all speech is equal. Yours is not superior.
right.
Someone on the other side, the
Mhm.
opposition, might say, well, you nasty Christians, all you want to do is convert everybody in a little room.
The conversion therapy has been all twisted and turned around. Again, they've redefined conversion therapy to
Mhm.
keep people like me quiet. I don't do conversion therapy in my office. I meet the client where they're at and we set the goals
Right.
and we go from there but I'm going to be forthright about helping them critically think through what brought them into the office.
Yeah. I think, somebody who wants to argue like that, what they're doing is grabbing one instance of something and running with it, trying to make the case for it. That you might be a Christian or Buddhist, pick your
Yeah,
religion,
pick it.
that you might be a Christian counselor. They're going to say, well, you just want to convert everybody. Now,
Mm,
the issue is
mm.
really about conscience protections.
Yes.
It's, can I be a Christian sitting in a room with a client? Can I be a Christian and not have to run afoul of my own beliefs while I'm talking to this guy? If he wants to talk to me as a Christian, we can do that, but I'm not going to bring that necessarily into the counseling
No.
room and try and convert. That's not why we're there. And that's my point is they'll make it the argument that you're there to convert everybody that comes in. That's not the case.
Well, again, it's supporting you need to have this viewpoint only.
Hmm.
It's taking away from there are many viewpoints, but they're trying to capture there's only one way to do that,
Right.
and it's my way,
Right.
and it's my ideology. Yours is not effective. Well, how do you know that? You don't even know that.
Might you have a case that illustrates the point?
Yes. So this is just recently in June of 2026. You can read it, look it up online, but Oregon dropped a $90,000 fine for a Christian counselor who refused to affirm an LGBT identity of client. So basically, and if you want to read it, we'll put it in the show notes, but it's stunning. Apparently, this counselor who was a Christian, was seeing a client for well over 2 years. Nothing was brought up through those it was
Good relationship.
good relationship, therapeutic alliance, and then all of a sudden, this client wanted to have the counselor to affirm a certain
Same sex.
lifestyle, and he was not willing to give that client that support
Oh,
because
believe.
of his personal beliefs, so it was violating his conscious protection at that point. But back up for just a second. 2 years of a very good therapeutic alliance, and all of a sudden this client start one session,
Somebody was whispering in his ear.
something happened. I'm assuming the client rendered a complaint. Oregon thought that was horrendous, sentenced the clinician to 6 hours of ethics because the Oregon licensing board didn't like that response, that free speech response, and it somehow violated the ACA code of ethics. I don't know how that's all related, but anyways, and then slapped the counselor a $90,000 fine for that. So the counselor clearly was not okay.
That's my lunch money for an entire year.
Yes. So, and then secured an attorney. And then what miraculously happened is Oregon, the licensing board, backed off and withdrew the entire thing
Because
because they were in violation of the Chiles v. Salazar case as per
mm,
SCOTUS. Now, I'm going to back up. Free speech is okay until you violate either a state statute, a state law, or a federal. This was federal. It includes all states. So if you think about it, Chiles v. Salazar is working. It's doing its job.
mm,
And I think if you read the article,
this just one case.
this is just one case and it just came out
Now,
June 18th.
okay.
2026. So what happened at the BHEC meeting, another thing too, is that I think the executive director was very clear and articulated very well that we're not going to monitor what you do in your room.
It's not even possible.
It's not possible. We're not going to do it. And I think he's right because of the Chiles Salazar case. That was his takeaway.
That's the legal reason why they won't do it. The
Right.
rational reason is, how in the hell are you going to do that?
Well, it's he said, she said at that point.
Absolutely.
Now, clearly, if you're having sex with your client and there's a laundry list of what constitutes, it's not just the full Monty. It's like there's a list
There's 4 pages
in
of what
Texas. So, or
some of that
insurance
stuff.
fraud or violating all that kind of stuff. So in Texas, there is a page of state statutes or federal that you need to think about doing, you need to be aware of, because this is part of your license.
Well, before you dive into
Yeah.
hold the thought,
Yeah,
in all 4 boards in their rule books,
in Texas.
there is a 2-line statement that
Yes.
says, as a licensee,
Yes.
and you signed off on this when you
Mhm.
signed up for, you literally
Yes, you
autographed
literally signed
the
up.
form, that you are required to follow all
All-
state and federal laws.
Yes.
There's no wiggle room in
No.
there. All state and federal laws.
And they also have another thing that says, I have read and understand all of the rule book. And it's 140 pages long.
Which is a joke because nobody
That's
reads
so,
the rule
that's
book.
so comical to me.
Unfortunately.
But
Read your rule book.
Read your rule book.
Okay, so there's that. But despite that, which is clear as clear can get, the BHEC agency in Texas, the licensing agency, thought it would be a good idea way back when to, you know what, let's list the top 10. There's more than that, but let's list the top 10 laws that are being egregiously violated. When first we met, the largest offense that resulted in complaints in Texas was improper release of records. So BHEC decided, we're gonna print all 8 pages of the code in
Texas
the rule
Health
book.
and Safety Code, Chapter 611. And do you know how many Texas providers have read that and fully understand it? Maybe a handful.
Despite despite
that,
release of records is no longer the number one problem.
No.
It's still on the list, but it's not the number one problem. There is a list that you referred to.
882.36
is where you can find it in the rule book. And there is a list of at least a dozen different codes.
There's some in family code. There's some in some about,
administrative code, right.
Occupational code, blah, 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 blah. And so you got to look through that and see how it pertains. And we do some workshops on that, so you know what it's talking about. But they're going to be adding more to the list.
This is what got you excited.
And thank you.
They're going to be adding all of the Senate Bill 14 stuff and Senate Bill 12, which had to do with social.
And Chiles v. Salazar is federal, so I don't even know if they have to list it, because it's a federal. Yeah. But it would be helpful if they did.
Well, the whole point is, despite the 2-line statement that says you got to obey the federal and state laws, we're going to put a list of things here that you really need to pay special attention to, because
it pertains to counselors.
Right now, you're not.
Right. So that's going to be.
They're adding to that.
They're making it public. The thing that I like about BHEC is that they're trying to be as transparent as possible to the licensees that they govern, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But, they're trying to be as transparent so there are no surprises in, if a complaint happens. Well, you can't be surprised because it's in the rule book.
Yeah. One of the things I'm trying to wrap my head around, and again, so is everybody else,
yes,
the lawyers and courts and whatnot, is the difference between professional speech and professional conduct. And the more you think about that, the more it's like a Venn diagram, 2 circles, and it's overlapped. It's like a can of fish worms. It's not a clear cut. Speech evolves into conduct. No, it's professional speech can be conduct, and then professional conduct can be concrete actions that you take. For example, the question is, when does professional speech become professional conduct? I'm starting to think the answer is, well, it's both. We were talking about this yesterday, and I was trying to see through the mud and get a clearer picture. When you go into a counseling room with someone and you start a discussion, by the way, when the door shuts, the state views that as the delivery of services, and that free speech outside we came in is now professional speech, and it can be regulated. And yes, talk therapy is talk, but it can be regulated. So is that a delivery of services? It's a yes/no question. is CBT, DBT, FBI. Is that a delivery of services?
I would think so.
Yeah, sounds like it to me. That's professional speech. And it's also the other side of the coin at the same time is it's professional conduct.
Right. If there's a therapist in the room with a client and the therapist starts doing sexual innuendos in speech, you've just violated our Texas code because that's part of having sex with your client. You're doing these sexual overtones in your speech that you've just crossed the line.
Right. What you do, because what you do in the room is not free speech. It has morphed into professional speech. Again, when the door's shut, it's professional speech, and now it's regulatable
based on conduct,
based on ethics, state laws, First Amendment doctrine, because it's viewed by the law as a delivery of services.
Yes.
Now, speech, you can't nail it to the wall. It's speech.
Right. We're having a conversation.
Things that you can nail to the wall include your intake paperwork, informed consent in all its forms throughout your time together with them, a recommendation and treatments, your overall treatment plan, which consists of some of this stuff, letter writing. That was enumerated clearly in Senate Bill 14.
Yes.
Wish there had been some other things, but the court cases to come will clarify.
Yeah.
Letter writing, referrals, your case notes. Oh, case notes is a big thing.
Case notes are your clinical support of the actual diagnosis of the client.
Okay.
So you are professionally trained to do your case notes that reflect the diagnosis, medical necessity of the client being there in the first place.
Well, the overall point of that is every bit of that is classified as conduct. It's professional conduct. It's part of the treatment that you are delivering. The treatment that you are delivering in the room through professional speech and professional conduct is classified. It's two sides of the same coin. It's not two separate coins. It's two sides of the same coin.
So
your speech is part of the treatment delivery.
If I write a letter to start the process for gender affirming care, is that free speech? Is that professional speech? Or is that a conduct issue in the state of Texas?
Well, in the state of Texas, it's illegal to do that. So that's all you need to know.
Right. But is it once they're 25, I can write the letter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's not outlawed in Texas.
It's not outlawed in Texas. But coming back around to the therapist at some point, if it doesn't go well for the patient and there's serious side effects, permanent damage, etc.
Well, now you're back to,
is
it a good idea? Is that the hill you want to die on?
Yes. I mean, no, I'm not, not me.
Is it, I know,
but,
is it
but
legal?
I got you.
Whether it's legal or not.
You can write the letter at age 25, but what you failed to do this is my personal opinion. What that clinician is failing to do is doing a proper informed consent of what happens if I write that letter. So I'm going to tell the client, you're asking me to write this letter. Okay. Let's review the side effects and possible things that could potentially occur to you before you consider commanding a therapist to write this letter for you, because you want to start the puberty blockers, the hormones, you want to have all the surgeries. I will bet you a lot of money that none of these counselors who are writing these letters, whether it's for a minor or if it's for adult, did they do a proper informed consent? And I will say flat out, no.
Yeah.
Their informed consent is, well, you'd rather be alive being the other side than what you are now. Well, that's not informed consent. That's just harassment. And that's the white coat telling the client, if you don't go through this, you're going to kill yourself. That's kind of negligent in my head, but okay. But this is the whole thing with WPATH that the Federal Trade Commission is really, really scrutinizing. But here's the thing. Part of our job as clinicians, and nobody's talking about this except ours, in our conference this coming up. But we're talking about, what does informed consent really truly look like? Now, in the rule book, people just think that the informed consent is just all the, I agree that my, to see my person and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. If I have clients on medication, the first thing I do is informed consent of the medications, side effects, and we highlight it, we do the whole thing, and part of their symptoms are the side effects from the medications. And we do that education walk. My job is to do informed consent. Okay, you're taking all these medications. I'm going to download all the side effects on all the medications. We're going to go in here and I'm doing informed consent with you so you understand, because the doctors aren't doing it.
Okay, hold your thought.
So that's informed consent in my head.
I have a question for you. You're a licensed professional counselor.
Mhm.
At any time, at any point in your grad school career, did anybody talk to you about pharmaceuticals and
Yes, but not on the side effect side.
okay?
Psychopharmacology, yes. Here's all the medications for this and that and all that
Okay.
kind of stuff, but not the side effects.
All right. So if a doctor doesn't do his informed consent,
Yeah, which they don't.
and then that patient shows up here,
Yep.
are you obligated, and by what, to do an informed consent that he should have done?
I'm obligated because he's in my room. He needs to understand that I'm filling the holes for him, that he has no idea.
So a counselor is thinking, how in the world am I going to learn about this stuff and know what these side effects are and how to properly do it? Well, if you'd have showed up at our conference last year, you would have heard Brian Artist tell you how to do that.
That's the rub. Our counselors, where does that informed consent stop, start, whatever? But I'm a big believer that if they're on some prescriptions, like most of them have at least 5 or more, I'm looking those things up because that's a lot in my head.
And you're a smart cookie.
It's
So
like
if you can do it,
anybody can do
anybody
it.
can
It
do it.
doesn't take long.
Not to minimize, because you got the brains. Go
I
ahead.
want to go back to the letter writing. If counselors choose to do the letter writing, okay, not for minors. For adults, let's just go on that side for a second. You will need to do your own research about the side effects of the procedures you're prescribing as per the letter. If you're going to do that, you need to have a conversation, and in writing. I've reviewed the hormone blockers, the puberty blockers, they're irreversible. Here's the damage that's going to occur. If you do the mastectomy and the bottom surgery and all that kind of stuff, you're going to be a permanent patient in this way. Here are the side effects of this surgery. You're never going to be able to go. I know this sounds really gross. You're never going to go to the bathroom the same. It's going to be something, an experience multiple times during the day. You want to have your breasts cut off. Okay, there's some serious damage to tissue that won't heal for the rest of your life.
Right.
So if you're not doing that, it's going to set you up to not be in trouble with BHEC, but you're going to get a civil lawsuit. We're seeing that now. And guess what? In the civil lawsuits, guess who's bearing the brunt of this?
Of the penalty, the counselor, because
the surgeon wouldn't have done it had the letter not. This was your clinical impression. This is your prescription pad.
you were guarding the gate.
I'm the guardian of the gate. I let the burglar in. Here you go.
There's more than 20 lawsuits right now, way more than 20, and that number is going to increase.
Yes.
Of people who went through surgeries and decided, oh my gosh, this was a mistake and nobody told me.
And it will happen with adults who had the letter writing occur at 25. So my point is that the letter writing is the prescription pad that gets it started. That's why in Texas, Senate Bill 14, mental health professionals are healthcare professionals. And here's another twist. The Federal Trade Commission is suing WPATH because of deceptive practices, right? They lied.
But a counselor might say, to your point about you may get sued someday, but the literature that I read said everything was safe and effective and it was okay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just ran with that. So they're responsible for this, right?
No, you didn't do your research. And if you did your research, you would have stopped that cold.
Or you believed bad research.
This is the rub.
That should scare the crap out of you.
Right. So the Federal Trade Commission, along with the states Alaska, Iowa, Nebraska, and Texas, filed a lawsuit against WPATH alleging the organization has provided the means for medical providers to make false and unsubstantiated claims to parents in order to sell pediatric medical transition services. This was a moneymaker for everyone. And it goes on to list that. It was a moneymaker for therapists to write the letter. It was a moneymaker for continued care and the counseling because they're never going to be the same. The doctor is, hey, you sent this. So it's a moneymaker for the doctor because of the prescriptions that they write, and it's going to be a permanent patient for them. Then we're going to get ready for the surgery. It's a permanent gateway for all the hospital visits, all the surgeries, all the. This is a huge moneymaker
Lifetime
for big
client.
pharma. This is a huge money-making thing for all the hospitals. And Texas got caught. Texas Children's Hospital got caught. And so, but this is going to be pretty damning.
Let me talk about this letter for a minute. If somebody objects to the laws as they exist and the opinions that have been passed, does letter writing fall under speech or does it fall under conduct? Is it free speech? No, because it happens in your little room. It's part of your delivery of care, right?
Right.
So it's not free speech. You have the right to believe that you can write letters if you want to. You can believe anything you want.
Well,
All right. Is it professional speech or is it conduct?
I think it's professional conduct. It's similar to if I've been asked to write a letter for emotional support animals, which I don't because I haven't vetted the actual animal. But this is a money-making thing for therapists too. Okay. And they're not vetting the boa constrictor that they're signing up to, oh, yeah, they need this boa constrictor because, this is their emotional support animal.
You ever tried to put a harness on one of those things?
Yeah. And
Anyway.
they haven't gone through the emotional support animal, the actual training, which is pretty intense. I only had one client who had a professional emotional support dog, and he went through the whole thing with this pet. And it's got the badge and the whole everything. That's something totally different. But see, in this letter writing, this is a professional conduct delivery system of the treatment plan.
It's part of the service you're delivering.
It's the treatment plan.
Therefore, it's
for
regulatable.
gender dysphoria,
Right.
apparently, which is what the Federal Trade Commission is really upset about because they've been lied. Everybody was lied to.
I'm wondering,
including the parents.
I'm wondering if it makes any difference if you call the letter writing for minors in Texas professional speech, part of the delivery system, or professional conduct, something a little more concrete, things that are written down, referrals. So I don't know if it makes any difference because both of those categories are regulatable by the state. So it's
Are case notes free speech? Is a treatment plan free speech?
that's part of professional conduct.
Yes. So if I'm going to get my prescription pad, so
None of this is free speech.
here's a sample of a one-page template that WPATH trains people on. It's a one-page, and you just fill in the name, the pronouns, accommodations. My clinical assessment is diagnosed as having gender dysphoria, blah, 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 and also meets the criteria set forth by the WPATH SOC 8, Standards of Care version 8. So this is the template that counselors have. It's a one-session model. Really?
Yeah, it's pretty weak.
So it's like a doctor seeing a patient for the first time, or maybe a second time, and not doing any blood work or anything like that, and just looking at the patient and say, oh, you have stage 4 cancer. Here's the prescription to start your chemo tomorrow. There's nothing. There's no psychological assessment. There's nothing.
I think the writing of for minors in Texas falls under, take your pick, professional speech, which is part of the delivery system, or it falls under professional conduct. It does not fall under free speech. And since professional speech and professional conduct, two sides of the same coin, are both regulatable by the state, and the state cannot practice viewpoint discrimination, and you have conscience protections in the little room, I don't see how it can be viewed through Chiles Salazar as viewpoint discrimination.
Right. So I want to read this to you, Philip. to
All right.
to make the
And then we're going to land the plane.
we're gonna
We're going to
yep,
dive into this stuff
later.
next time
But
in greater detail.
the Federal Trade Commission in the lawsuit by the other states against WPATH, that WPATH, here's the crux of the issue, failed to disclose side effects of certain pediatric medical transition services, including cross-sex hormones, can cause mood disturbances, vocal pain, limitations, pelvic pain, clitoral discomfort, vaginal pain. So WPATH, in its own right, failed informed consent. Yet, it's the standard of care. Wow.
Mhm. Standard of care is based on a consensus. All right.
Yes.
Anyway.
Consensus. It's not science-based.
No, it's
Right.
not. All right. We have something called the Austin BBQ Club.
Mhm.
Start your own club in your own
Mhm.
state.
Yep.
And we travel because we're in the Dallas area
Yeah.
and we go to Austin 3, 4, 5 times a year
Mhm.
and we do our thing. And then we go eat barbecue because we can. Got to eat. Girls got to eat. And then we drive back and have good discussions and say our piece. So you can find out more about that. Link in the show notes, Austin BBQ Club. Come with us, meet us there, show up on Zoom. You don't have to say anything, just show up.
Yeah, just listen to it. Get to know your council. Get to know your licensing board. They're not as scary as you think they are.
No, they're
They're
not.
people that just are trying to do what the state of Texas is needing them to do.
Yep.
And that's to protect Joe Citizen.
Then usually in the fourth quarter of every year, we have our annual conference, and that's coming up here
Mhm.
just about 4
Couple
months.
months.
And you got a pretty good lineup of speakers lined up this time. One of them's going to be talking very heavily on this informed consent thing.
Yes.
It's a big deal. And you can find out more about that through the link in the show notes as well. What else you want to add?
That's it.
That's it?
I appreciate the BHEC meeting. I appreciate both the executive director and the deputy director's clarification on things. And, and faith-based counselors, you have a voice.
That
You
would
always
be
did.
that would be Daryl Spinks as the executive director, and
Mhm.
Robert Romig is
Yes.
is the Robin to
Trusty.
his Batman.
Trusty sidekick.
And they're both very good at what they do,
Yes,
and
very
they
good.
want the right things
Yep.
for the people
And they
of
don't take
Texas.
things lightly. I
All
think
right.
they really think through things quite a lot. And so I'm appreciative of
They're
that.
very good at what they do. And that's about wraps it up for this time.
That
I
sounds great.
appreciate you taking another hour of your
Another
week to be
hour.
with us. And I need you
Me? Okay.
to be good.
I'll try.